Anyway, to your question, because there's nothing I can do to dig myself out of the hole that I just dug myself into, what are the differences between a normal condenser and a broadcast condenser microphone? That is the $1,000,000 question, the $1,000,000,000 question. It's the question that's asked about dynamics as well. What makes a dynamic a broadcast dynamic over a regular dynamic, a handheld dynamic, a studio dynamic? Who knows? Marketing? The look of it? I think it's important to think about how a broadcast microphone is used differently than a studio microphone. In a studio with a condenser microphone like a U87, because that is what people think of when you think of studio condenser, you're going to use that 6 inches, 12 inches away. You're trying to capture the most realistic version of the audio. You're trying to make it punch through a mix, a dense music mix. So that is going to require you to have certain characteristics. You're going to want a little bit of a bump in the presence to cut through a dense mix, a lot of guitars, a lot of instruments going on. If you're using it 12 inches away, you don't need extremely dense foam because you're going to have a thin pop filter 4 inches away from your mouth or 6 inches away, then 6 inches from the microphone. So you don't have to worry about those aspects as much. But when we think about broadcasting, radios, podcasting, you're going to be close miking. I thought there was a microphone on that stand. That's not going to help. You're going to be close miking 3 inches away. So you're going to have to do two things. Account for plosives and wind noise. So you would have additional wind protection on it. Look at the Earthworks Ethos. It has a massive bit of foam on the end of it to help with plosives. Secondly, control the bass a bit, because as you get closer to a directional microphone, that proximity effect is going to be exaggerated, boosting the bass. Boosting the bass. I don't know why I still think that's funny. Boosting the bass. The bass. But you will need to control that a bit more, so the frequency response will likely be a bit more attenuated in the lower frequencies to account for the close miking of the mic. And you may also have slightly different top ends to broadcast condensers because they're not going to be competing with as dense of mixes. Maybe not. I guess it depends on what kind of broadcast application you're thinking of. If it's going to be a podcast, chances are you're not going to have extremely dense music underneath you. It's going to be mainly spoken word such as this. If you're doing some kind of radio or music show, first off, don't. You're going to copyright. You're going down a dangerous path. But if you're doing a music show, then maybe you'll be competing with really dense music. But it's probably not going to be too dominant. With radio, I guess they just pull down the faders on the music when they're talking. And it doesn't really have to fit within the mix. So you don't have to worry about that as much. So that would be what I classify as a broadcast condenser. It's going to have a bit more protection for plosives. The low end is going to be suited for close miking a bit more. And the top end is not going to have to be as exaggerated because it's not necessarily going to be competing with as dense of a mix as a studio condenser might. Although then that raises the question, but then why do you have the RE320 and the RE27ND, which are both extremely bright dynamics? If anybody, I know there are some people who listen to this that do radio. Do you need extremely bright microphones to compete with dense mixes? Because I'm talking out of my rear end here. I'm just assuming how this works. Let me know. How do you decide on what microphone to use for radio broadcasting? Do you need that presence boost to overpower and cut through the music bed that is going on all the time, or do you just pull the fader down? I don't know.
Hello again, fellow Earthlings, and hello, Bandrew. Bandrew, I only have two questions for you this time. What are the differences between a regular condenser microphone and a broadcast condenser microphone? Also, I got an Elgato Wave 1. Is it listenable with the current EQ that I have on it?